Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, customer expectation is super high right now, and one of the big things that I've noticed over the last year or so is customer expectation is super high right now, and most people want that Amazon, Netflix, Shopify experience and pick up where they left off seamlessly on any device at any time, any location. But they are increasingly concerned about giving away their data. And as a result, Apple have made that super easy by noticing what's happening in the room and rebranding itself as a privacy-first company, and arguably a subscription company too, with those growing list of subscriptions. And then we have Google and Facebook, who have built their success on advertising. And Google are suddenly preparing for the end of the third-party cookie, and maybe Facebook can see what's coming on the horizon too, and have rebranded as Meta. But unimpressed shareholders wiped $200 billion off the market value. So are the likes of Google and Facebook that were built on advertising actually heading for trouble in the next couple of years? Well, today's guest that thinks the days of growing your own business on performance marketing are over, and they only actually make Google and Facebook, etc. richer. And the way things are heading, maybe not for much longer. It's a great topic, and I want to learn more about this and a company called dotkonnekt. Who is today's guest? Well, buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to New Jersey, and we can find out together. So, a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm Chandan Mahajan. I'm the co-founder and chief growth officer of dotkonnekt. And here I'm responsible for building the ecosystem of our customers, great partners, and growing our brand.
And before we go into finding out more information about dotkonnekt, one of the things that I always like to do is find out more about my guest's origin story. So I've got to ask, how did you get here? Where did your passion for tech come from? Can you remember that moment that lit the spark? And ultimately, what put you on the path that you're on right now?
Sure. So, Neil, going back to my childhood, I was actually born in a retail family in India. So, when I say retail runs in my blood, I really mean it. I learned more about the trade from my father and watching the family as I was growing up before I had a chance to move out of India and started work in the global retail environment. So the last 20 years of my professional career, I've had a chance to work both on the technology, operations, and the business transformation side for retail, working with some really good brands. And that really expanded my horizon of what I've learned growing up and how the world is moving. So it's just been a fascinating journey and something that I love to learn every day.
Right. Now, I was going to say, I love that. And the family aspect to your story as well, obviously very important to you.
It's funny that as the world is moving and the technology is evolving, end of the day, there's so much of the basics that don't go away, right? In terms of how you engage with customers, the delightful experience. And those are a few things I learned from my father, and they still stick with me.
Oh, man, I love that. And fast forward to 2022, and obviously we're here to talk about dotkonnekt. And I understand for many people listening, it might be the very first time they're hearing about you guys. So can you tell me a little bit more about it and also some of the problems that you're solving with technology?
So over the last few years, we've been watching some very big shifts that are happening in the commerce ecosystem. So if you see one, how the pandemic caused a significant e-commerce adoption, right? I'm sure you've seen numbers like, we within less than 90 days, the world saw almost 10 years worth of e-commerce penetration progress happening, right? And that's a massive shift that has happened. And I think what we're seeing is it's going to rewrite the fundamentals of this business going forward, especially with the democratization of e-commerce happening on one end and the decentralization of business happening on the other. What it's really doing, it's empowering consumers, it is empowering brands to really engage in a very different way. So what we really believe is that this decade belongs to D2C. It is the decade of D2C. And there are definitely numbers that are also showing the right signs that what we believe is right. Because if you look at how the consumer behavior is shifting, by 2025, there have been reports to say that 8 in every 10 consumers will buy from D2C brands. And if you look at it further, at least half of those 8 customers for their purchases, at least greater than 40% of their purchases will actually be from D2C brands and not the major brands that we all have seen all of our lives. And I think that is also showing a very significant shift in the consumer behavior and what they are liking and how they're engaging with brands, these days, right? Gone are the days where everything in our house used to come from one big CPG company or a house of brands. If you look around, I'm sure there are a lot of new brands that you would see in your house as well. Yeah. And I think it's just also signaling a shift in the loyalty of customers, right? I think the whole aspect of loyalty is changing. It is no longer to a brand. It is about the purpose of the brand and what it stands for. So I think that really is, creating a great level playing field for new D2C brands as well, or the digital brands. And of course, with consumer behavior changes, also comes this whole nuance of the low attention spans. I was reading a very interesting study recently where for the first time ever, the average attention span of a human is now lower than of a goldfish, right? So goldfish, it says the attention span is 9 seconds. Humans have gone to 8 seconds now. So imagine how important it is to get the attention of that, of that wannabe customer that you're going after.
Oh, man, it certainly gets you thinking, doesn't it, about the attention span there? And something else, one of the reasons that I invited you on the podcast today was when I heard about your belief that the days of growing a business on performance marketing alone are well and truly over, and why actually they just seem to make Facebook and the likes of Google, etc., richer rather than boosting the performance of the business itself. But can you expand on that belief?
As I talked about some of the shifts that are happening, I think one thing that is a lot of the brands and CPG companies are realizing that direct-to-consumer, or a lot of us call it D2C, is becoming a very strategic growth channels for these brands. And there are a few reasons why that is happening. One, because obviously a D2C engagement has the highest potential for driving the profitable growth for these brands. It also gives you an end-to-end insight into the consumer behavior and their, what they're really looking for in your product, which can then create a great feedback loop into new product introduction, how you curate the right kind of categories for those customers and really increase the loyalty as well, with those customers, right? Now, having said that, if you look at traditionally, brands have struggled to grow the D2C channel. It's always been a very low single-digit percentage. And that's why over the years, we've seen most D2C brands tend to focus more of their business on marketplaces, going into retail partnerships or distribution partnerships over struggling with D2C. We believe that's also because of the old playbook that was in play here, right? And that is still in play here. And, most of the times what was happening was brands have been really focused on making sales and not making customers. And I think that's a very stark difference in terms of, how brands need to think differently and act differently as well. So the whole old days of that you build a business with Shopify and sell with Facebook seem to be getting over. And there's a reason why that's happening, because one, as the competition is rising in this field with new brands coming in, of course, the ad costs are going high, which means the cost of customer acquisition, or CAC, as we call it, has gone very high. And on the other hand, the other shift is the third-party cookies, and the whole tracking of that is going away as well. And we've seen what Apple has done recently. What that is also doing is it is reducing the return on investment or the return on ad spend for these customers. So on one hand, they are not able to afford the rising ad cost. On the other hand, the efficacy of that performance marketing is also going down in most cases, right? So it is not looking like a very sustainable model, here. And what we believe is the new playbook or the new way to do for them to do businesses. They have to really look at attracting their customers with great content, and they have to figure out how to grow their business organically. And this is where convergence of content, community, and commerce is very important to help their customers, engage and retain as well.
And thinking about everything that you've just mentioned there, it brings me on to another topic that I know you're very passionate around as well, and that is, as a result of all these trends and changes, that you believe that organically reimagining commerce is the only way for digital native brands to win now. So is that something you can expand on as well?
I think there's also a realization happening now that brands can no longer survive or grow just by being an e-commerce site alone. They have to really figure out ways to better compete with retail and the marketplace, because coming to think of it as a consumer, if the same product were to be available on a marketplace, as a consumer, you really do not have a lot of reasons to go outside of the marketplace or the convenience of the marketplace and go and set up an account with another D2C site and then place that order. And I think that's becoming a real challenge for a lot of these brands as to how do you engage a customer who's now getting so used to of being in the Amazon ecosystem and so used to of the Prime-like experiences. And I think this is where the importance of direct to consumer in terms of its ability to be a very strategic growth channel for these brands is coming in. And that is where we've been talking to a lot of brands about the importance of content. They have to really attract their customers with great content. They have to really engage them into a very close-knit community of like-minded people. Because once you have, once you attract them with content, your ability to create a very close, a great group of customers or engaged community becomes very important. And that can help drive sustainable commerce more as a byproduct.
So the question I have to ask is, where does dotkonnekt fit into all this? Because you hit on a great point a moment ago that for customers, they all expect that Amazon Prime-like experience everywhere now. So where does dotkonnekt fit in all that?
So what dotkonnekt is building is, our purpose, if you see, Neil, is to help progressive brands organically grow their D2C customer, a D2C channel, and we want to do it by creating a technology or a tech stack that's purpose-built for D2C. And that helps really, drive the content community and commerce story together for them. Because I think one challenge that we have come across is, if you look at on the commerce tech side, D2C brands have really had a challenge so far working with tech choices that are not meant for them, right? So we call them the ill-fitted platforms because there are two extremes that we see in this world. On one hand, there are a lot of these do-it-yourself kind of platforms like a Shopify and others, which can serve a great purpose, but they serve a great purpose for a certain community and a size of brands which are at a very early stage. And we come across a lot of scenarios where these brands are starting to outgrow, and they feel that these platforms are very limiting in terms of the functionality and the capability that they provide for growth. On the other extreme, we see options for these brands in terms of very large enterprise applications like Salesforce and Adobe kind of platforms, which if you see were originally meant or built for large retail and enterprises. So what we're starting to see is very two extreme choices, and both of them do not work for the growing brands, because on one hand, they have a very packaged, very templatized, limited capability stack. On the other hand, they have something very complex, which is hard to maintain, tough to integrate, built on legacy architecture, and is just too expensive to work on. So we've been seeing a lot of brands with having seen no choices which fit them. They do a lot of custom development, and I think that's where we're seeing a lot of challenges because custom development is no easy, as you know. It takes a lot of time. It's very expensive, and talent is becoming scarce and scarce. So that is what motivated us to look at how do we drive a better experience, for these brands. And this whole aspect of creating an experiential commerce tech came, which is what dotkonnekt is building. So our objective is how can we drive or how can we combine the convenience of a Shopify-like tech with the power of custom technology and create value at that intersection for D2C brands.
So I'm curious, do you have any, use cases that you might be able to share that will just be able to bring everything that we're talking about here to life?
So I think there can be a couple of good use cases here. If you look at the health and wellness segment, I think that's a good example where we've seen some great opportunities for brands to do something differently. So if you look at most of the sites currently are focused on selling. They're not really trying to solve a problem. And I think this is where we see great opportunity because the winner brands, the ones that do really well, are first focused on educating their customers with great content, then enriching their discovery process, and then finding out how to better tailor that buying journey. If you look at some examples, like if you were to just shopping for a skincare product, it is very important for you as a customer to first see what is right for you, what is right for your skin type. Can somebody give you some good tips, some expert advice on how do you take care of your skin in a certain weather, in certain conditions and everything. And as part of that, education journey and experience, if they can engage you with very curated recommendations and then follow it up with a very easy checkout option. Just make the process very seamless from discovery to education to buying. I think that's a winning formula, and there are a couple of brands that have done it very well. The challenge being, Neil, is that experience currently is not very easy for the other brands to replicate because it is all very custom driven. It takes a lot of time. There is no tech that very naturally powers an experience that is a seamless convergence of content, community, and commerce. I think that's where we are trying to play. Because otherwise what happens is, if you look at what the brands are resorting to do right now is they do a lot of paid ads kind of marketing. So for example, when a customer has already shared what they're looking to buy, a lot of these brands are paying a very high fee to the likes of Facebook and Instagram to do a lot of paid ads. So on one hand, on the upfront, you're paying a significantly high amount to do paid ads. Then when the customer comes to your landing page, then they are doing a lot of promotions to convert them as well. And in all of this, they're unaware that even if the customer buys that product, if they're going to ever return back to the brand, right? So just imagine the cost of customer acquisition, right? Where you're paying these ad tech platforms, you're doing a lot of promotions to convert the customer finally. And it actually turns out to be very expensive to be a sustainable model. Instead, what we recommend is these brands should also focus on content marketing, and where, interestingly, the cost of doing content marketing over performance marketing is almost 1/100th. It's very, very minimal because you are now then trying to educate a customer versus just trying to sell a product.
And there's so much ground we've covered today in our short conversation, from the customer expectation from those Amazon-like experiences to the death of the third-party cookie in the next couple of years. I know Google have pushed that deadline out a little bit, but it's still going to come. And then we've got Apple rebranding themselves as an almost privacy-first company. So I've got to ask, what's your grand vision for Dotkonnekt and how you're going to evolve with this changing landscape?
So it's a very exciting space to be in, Neil. And like you said, it'll take we really believe it's going to take a village to get there, right? Because it's an ever evolving space. How technology, how customer experience, and the whole the tech aspects are changing. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch together. What we're doing at Dotkonnekt is, our objective is to really create a very strong partner ecosystem so that we can offer holistic business solutions to brands to grow their D2C channel. And it's almost like what Shopify is currently doing for the small entrepreneurs and the SMBs. Our aim is to recreate, something similar, like a great solution ecosystem to the D2C brands with the experiential commerce technology at the core of it. And we're very excited to be in the initial stages of the journey. We have been lucky to have some great partners along in this journey, and look forward to doing some great things together.
Well, I wish you the best of luck on this journey. And before we started recording today, you were telling me that you do listen to the podcast, so you know what's going to come next. You probably had a little bit of time to prepare for this. But I always finish the show by asking a guest if there's a song, piece of music, movie or book that has inspired or helped them in their career, and leave the guests on an inspirational note. Do you have a choice and a story for us?
Quite a few, Neil, but... I've been a Bryan Adams fan for a long time, and I love many of his songs. But there's one in particular, it's called Star, which has always stuck with me for a long time. And, it can have many meanings, depending on what stage of the life and what you're going through. But there were a couple of lines. It says, everybody wants to be a winner. Everybody has a dream. We all need a shining star when things ain't what they seem. So tonight we're going to wish upon a star we never wished upon before. And I think this really, hits the chord on many fronts, right? Because in life, everyone will go through a lot of turns, as an individual, in family, at work, in your new ventures. And I think we all need that, a great support, a great friend, a partner, and just that bit of encouragement when you just need to keep going at it. So I think that this song, really gets me all the time. It's been one that has stuck with me for many years now.
Wow, I love that. Great choice. I'll get that added to our Spotify playlist. And for everyone listening that wants to continue the conversation we start today, find out more information about Dotkonnekt, maybe even contact your team, what's the best starting point?
So we are on dotkonnekt.com, and that's dotkonnekt.com. We're very active on LinkedIn, and hopefully as things open up, would love to catch up with many of you over a beer. So find me in New Jersey when you're here.
Love that. So dotkonnekt is building this experiential commerce platform purpose-built for D2C brands to converge content and community and help them organically grow commerce for brands. And I think it's so important to hear that, because like you said at the very beginning of this podcast, the days of growing a business on performance marketing are over. They only seem to satisfy Facebook and Google's sales there. But more than anything, I think what brought that to life was your story, and leaving us with a great song too. So thank you for sharing that with us today.
Thank you, Neil. Pleasure speaking with you.
So are the days of growing businesses on performance marketing really over? Do they actually just make Facebook and Google richer? And for how much longer are they going to do that? Maybe organically reimagining commerce is the only way for digital native brands to win. It's certainly an exciting space at the moment, and so many different ways to empower brands in this new normal, and a selection in this vast array of new normals that are heading in the future around this space. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about anything we talked about today. Myself and the guest have had a good conversation, but this show is not about either of us, really. We'll raise the points and our observations and what we see out there, but you might be much closer to this than certainly myself. So let me know what you've seen in the last year or so and what you predict will happen in the future by emailing me now, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes. Connect with me. Don't just hit follow. I want you to connect. Send me a message. Let me know that you listen to the show, and we'll keep this conversation going. But on that cheesy note, it's time for me to get out of here now. So a big thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.